Hello and welcome to Social Psychology with me, Liam.
And me, Joe.
This is Unit 2 of the AQA-AS Psychology Specification A. Okay, so we've got 5 short episodes for you. Hopefully they'll be short. And first of all, we're kicking off with explanations of conformity. What is conformity, Joe?
Conformity, Liam, is choosing a course of action that is favoured by the majority or minority of group members, or the course of action that is considered socially acceptable.
Okay, and what are group norms?
Group norms, Liam, are standards or rules about how to behave in a social group or situation.
Okay, and what about majority influence?
Majority influence occurs when a person changes their attitudes, beliefs, or actions in order to fit in with the larger group.
And minority influence?
Occurs when a person or small group of people influence the majority of a larger group, with the intention of changing their attitudes or behaviours towards an issue.
How lovely. Okay, we've got an example study here for conformity, just so you know it does actually exist. Basically, participants were put in a dark room individually, and they were asked to focus on a single spot of light. The participants were asked to estimate how far the light had moved and in what direction. The light did not actually move, so this is known as the autokinetic effect. They repeated the experiment in groups of 3. It was found that people converged on answers. So those with low estimates heightened them, and those with high estimates lowered them, i.e. a group norm was established by people conforming.
Okay, let's talk about majority influence now.
Okay, so we've got 3 things here. First of all, the dual process dependency model.
It's made up of normative social influence, informational social influence, and that's it. So
normative social influence is conforming to be or feel accepted and belong to a group. This links with compliance, and you can use Ash's study as evaluation that we'll talk about in a bit. Basically, where the cards were different length of lines, if you need some reference.
So an example of normative social influence is pretending to like a new TV program because all your friends like it.
Yay! Informational social influence is conforming because you think others are correct, so you imitate them. This links with internalization. You can use Clark's jury study as evaluation. We'll talk about this in a bit, where it's basically where the jury changed their mind after others presented with a counter-argument.
Okay, so an example of this is in a posh restaurant, not knowing which cutlery to use first. You'd look around at the other posh people and do whatever they're doing because you believe they're right.
Exactly. Okay, next one we've got is social identity explanations. This emphasises the importance of relationships and emotional ties with other group members to help in understanding why we conform with them. And we've got a little definition for you. Referent informational influence. What's this?
Referent informational influence is the pressure to conform with norms set by a group because we define ourselves as members of that group.
Yes, and we have a study to support this beautiful explanation called the Group Membership Study.
Bristolian teenage boys aged 14 to 15 were randomly allocated to one of 2 groups depending on their preference for one artist or another. They played a game where they allocate points to either group to be exchanged for money. Participants consistently allocated more points to their own group despite being able to gain more rewards by allocating equal points to each group. The tendency to favour one's own group, that's the in group, and discriminate against other groups, those are the out groups, was obvious in the study. Therefore, we have a social identity as well as a personal identity.
Yes, so this links to conformity through the meta-contrast principle, which says that the tendency for group members to see strong similarities between themselves and other in-group members and see large differences with other social groups. According to this approach, people conform to group norms because they are group members, i.e. they use the group norm to regulate their behaviour at all times. Therefore, upholding group norms can continue when the group is not present. For example,
continuing to support a football team even after moving out of the area.
Exactly. So the third one, we have social impact theory. The premise of this is that both minority and majority influence involve sources, i.e. the people that provide the influence, and targets, i.e. people who may be influenced.
The amount of influence depends on the three factors: the strength.
It does. For example, high-status individuals or experts will exert more social influence, i.e. people will be more likely to conform to their viewpoint.
The immediacy.
For example, if you're physically close to the source of social influence, you're more likely to conform.
And the quantity.
For example, the amount of sources trying to influence the targets, so as influence increases in numbers, it gathers more and more influence or momentum.
Okay, let's just quickly go through the university applicant study.
So this was where participants were in groups of 3. We had 2 participants and 1 confederate. A confederate is a person that is basically an actor, so they portray certain behaviour, but the participants think they're just a normal participant. So the confederate argued for a minority position. The task was to rate 40 uni applications for places in the university. They tested immediacy by having the confederate 4 feet away, which is high immediacy, or 10 feet away, which is low immediacy. And strength was tested by the confederate acting as a student, so that's low strength, or as an expert, which was high strength. They found that the expert had more impact, but only in the low immediacy group, and there was no difference in strength for the high immediacy group. This suggests that immediacy may be the most important factor in minority influence.
Okay, that concludes our first section. We'll see you in the next one for types of conformity.